How will I know that people have joined? Where will I be able to see this, or can you see this? بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين، وبعد. فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: لقد جاءكم رسول من أنفسكم عزيز عليه ما عنتم حريص عليكم بالمؤمنين رؤوف رحيم، فإن تولوا فقل حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. We always begin with the praise of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most kind, the most merciful, the benevolent. We send peace, salutation, the choicest of salawat upon Imam al-Anbiya, Sayyiduna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma fasalli wa sallim wa an'im wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallim. We take this opportunity to welcome one and all to Safwah Online in conjunction with CIEA, the Center of Islamic Economics. And for this evening, inshallah ta'ala, in preparation for Ramadan, we have titled our theme and titled our presentation and discussion for this evening, Ramadan, a financial preparation. We make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fill this evening, this event with khair, with goodness. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fill our sitting and our coming and our gathering here. May Allah fill it with His goodness. May Allah fill it with khair. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to benefit from this, insha'Allah ta'ala. Ameen. My dear respected listeners, the session for this evening, primarily one of the motivating factors behind this was that here in Perth in Australia, our borders have recently opened and many have been struck with COVID-19. There are many within our community, many within our homes who are struck with COVID-19, who have been down and have been in isolation, and many have not been able to attend the masajid and the normal gatherings that we do. So therefore we suggested for this session that we run it online, and this presentation be run as we see it this evening. We make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow this goodness. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us that we benefit with khair, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those who this upcoming Ramadan, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be from those who recognize its value, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Make us from those who recognize not only the value of the days of Ramadan, but also the value of this month to dawn upon us in a way that we reach it with khair, with afiyah. The dua of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, often leading up, as we are familiar, would be that Allahumma ballighna Ramadan, that Allah allow us to reach the month of Ramadan. My dear respected brothers and sisters, and those who are tuning in from different parts of the globe and wherever we are listening from, we remind ourselves with regard to the month of Ramadan, and in essence, the meaning of the month of Ramadan. Our title this evening is, of course, Financial Preparation for the month of Ramadan. But leading up to this, we want to set the tone as to what do we mean by financial preparation for Ramadan. It, of course, sounds like an odd topic or an odd discussion when we look at it on the surface, that how to financially prepare for Ramadan. And we set the tone for this by understanding and taking a few steps back into what is the essence of the month of Ramadan. When we look at the month of Ramadan and we look at the annals of history, we find that the month of Ramadan, by and large, Mufassirun, commentators and scholars make mention to us that Ramadan was ordained only and rendered obligatory only in the second year of Hijrah. And Ramadan, in essence, is a month that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know that fasting plays a pivotal role, and abstinence from food and drink, and that legitimate relationships that we have with our spouses during the daylight hours, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has rendered this forbidden and prohibited. When we think of this from a logical perspective, that it was only after the second year of Hijrah, after the second year of migration to Medina Munawwara, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the verses of Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyamu kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun, that, O you who believe, Allah has ordained and made obligatory upon you fasting, just as that He had made obligatory upon those who preceded you, so that you may attain in piety. When we think about these verses, logically this was revealed, as mentioned, in the second year of Hijrah, in the second year after the migration. The pertinent question arises here, that why was it only rendered in the second year after migration to Medina Munawwara? We know that migration to Medina Munawwara was that period of time that had opened the doors and for prosperity which was to come. Of course, the second year of Hijrah was not yet that moment, but after a few years, from the 5th year onwards, the 6th year onwards, as the conquest began and the Romans and the Persian empires were later on were to fall, but Makkah was conquered and the economic and general conditions of the Muslim Ummah became far better. The question logically arises here, that why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not render fasting obligatory upon the entire Ummah in Makkah Mukarramah, where the economic conditions was of such a state that this would have been more logically conclusive to render fasting obligatory? That there would be often days that there would not be food, there would not be drink, there was hardship, there was difficulty, and abstinence from food in such conditions where food was not readily available would have made more logical sense from every aspect. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only rendered it obligatory in the second year after Hijrah and after migration. And the reason for this, and the answer to this, lies in this very verse that was quoted, that لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you may attain piety, that you may attain taqwa. Fasting, Ramadan, is not only about fasting, and it's not only about abstinence from eating, from drinking, and legitimate conjugal relations. But in essence, Ramadan is what we will call a spiritual program, a comprehensive program that Allah has given to you and I, that we look at ourselves, we introspect, and the opportunity for a complete spiritual overhaul presents itself. When we reflect carefully on this, in the day and age that we are living, with all the contamination that we are exposed to, were it not for the mercy that Allah has had upon us, that the month of Ramadan comes on an annual basis. In a 12-month cycle, the month of Ramadan comes once. This is a mercy that Allah gives to you and I, that we can redress ourselves. We can introspect, re-look at ourselves, and re-examine our spiritual state. Allah forbid and Allah forgive us that were it not for the mercy upon us, imagine life without the month of Ramadan. If that 1 month did not come as a disruptor of disobedience, that even the most disobedient person, the person who has no cognizance of the obedience of Allah, the month of Ramadan comes and it puts the brakes of disobedience. That a person takes a step back and reflects to some degree. Some person may utilize and gain maximum benefit, who is spiritually prepared gains maximum benefit from Ramadan. But a person who may not be spiritually apt, someone who may not be always obedient to Allah, somebody who has weaknesses, that person and every person, Ramadan brings us back. Imagine life without Ramadan, the downward spiral of Allah's disobedience, that a person spends the entire life, day in, day out, month after month, and it's just a spiritual downward spiral that a person cannot control themselves. You know, the month of Ramadan, we know that it spiritually recharges us. After Ramadan, we know we feel better. A person enters Ramadan at times, may not feel in the best spiritual state. But as the month progresses, we find ourselves getting better. And as the last 10 days of Ramadan comes, a person is at a spiritual height. And then Ramadan passes and a person feels spiritually immune. A person feels that one is in a state of such height of spirituality that they will never return from this state, and there will be no retrogression. But as time progresses, again, one finds themselves going further and further away. The amount of Quran that was recited in Ramadan, months away from Ramadan, becomes much less. The amount of dua that one was doing in the month of Ramadan, as months of Ramadan pass Ramadan, one finds this becomes much less and much less. So the month of Ramadan, ultimately, it is a mercy, and it is an obedience from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a mercy that Allah has given to you and I. Shah Ahmad Shaheed rahimahullah, one of the great scholars of the past centuries, he was known as Mujaddid al-Fusani rahimahullah, the reviver of the second millennium or the second century. He made mention and he said that the month of Ramadan, if Allah has contained such mercy in this month, such mercy and such rahmah descends on the inhabitants of this earth and the mu'mineen of this earth during the month of Ramadan, that if one had to take the entire mercies of Allah, all the good, all the mercies, all the forgivenesses of the 11 remaining months, reflect for a moment, all the goodnesses of the day of Jumu'ah, all of the barakat of the day of Monday, all of the mercies of Allah between the Wednesday, Dhahar and Asr, where Allah accepts du'as, all the beauties of the days of Eid, the mercies of the nights of Eid, the 15th of Sha'ban, Laylatul Nisf min Sha'ban, all of these mercies are collectively put together. And he says that the month of Ramadan, one moment of the month of Ramadan was placed on the other side of the scale. All of these goodnesses would collectively not equate to that one moment of the month of Ramadan. That is the mercy that Allah looks at us during this month of Ramadan. In fact, Allama ibn al-Jawzi rahimahullah has written one unique thing. He said that, like, if one wants to give a parable and understand the analogy of the month of Ramadan and its strength, he said this is like Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam and his 11 brothers. That here were 11 brothers. Binyamin at some point had some inclusion, and the rest of the brothers, all of them had plotted against Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam. But that one Yusuf was sufficient enough at the end, that his status was sufficient enough to cause forgiveness for the rest of the 11 brothers. Sayyidina Allama ibn al-Jawzi rahimahullah mentions, he said the month of Ramadan, analyze it and look at it like this, that a person spends the entire rest of the year disobeying Allah. not obeying the injunction, the instruction of Allah, succumbing to the weaknesses of the nafs, succumbing to the weaknesses of shaitan. And Allah gives a person this month of Ramadan. And this person during the month of Ramadan has this opportunity now in totality to reform themselves. So Ramadan is about spiritual reform. It is about reconnecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This session, my dear respected brothers and sisters, it is not a lecture. And many of us are coming off COVID, as mentioned earlier in the part of opening minutes of our session. And the intent for this evening is not a bayan, a lecture of any sort, but rather from a practical perspective that how we can look at the betterment of our Ramadan, and then with a focus in particular from a financial perspective, that what type of obstacles there could be that perhaps hinder the benefit that we could be getting out of Ramadan, but in fact do not get that benefit. So the month of Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it a month about spiritual reform. It's like, if we reflect and have to give another parable to this, and often we cite, and this is not to say that the rest of the months we are not involved in ibadah. Most certainly, all of us, by the grace of Allah, to some degree, the good among us are busy with great ibadah and worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then there are weak ones like myself, who at times we fall into the disobedience of Allah, and we need to rectify ourselves. The month of Ramadan, outside of the month of Ramadan, many of us are involved in indirect ibadat. We're involved in our businesses, we're involved in careers, we're involved in our family. And these, to many degrees and many aspects, are part of the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these are areas for which we gain reward if we do this in a way that is consistent with the Sharia, consistent with the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the month of Ramadan is an unplug from indirect ibadat. And it's putting the plug into the socket of direct ibadah. That a person in the month of Ramadan rechannels, refocuses themselves with direct ibadah. That's why Salah is a direct ibadah, but we have something that enhances the Salah in the form of Taraweeh. We have Quran is an ibadah, but the month of Ramadan, it is a month of Quran. And therefore, direct ibadah becomes more enhanced with greater recital. Outside of the month of Ramadan, we make dua, but the month of Ramadan becomes a more focal point. The purpose of fasting, in essence, is, whilst it is a direct ibadah, in essence, it is part and parcel of enhancing the spiritual self to gain spiritual maximum benefit from tilawah of Quran, from Taraweeh, from dua. Fasting is a nourishment of the ruh and the soul, that it enhances and it nourishes the ruh, that it prepares itself for the soul and the direct ibadah that the soul will do. So ultimately, Ramadan is about this. It's about reconnecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in order to reconnect and to gain the maximum benefit, Ramadan is full of opportunity for benefit. We fast, we read Taraweeh. There is moments in Ramadan, every single moment of acceptance of dua. The hadith of Nabi alayhi salatu wassalam said, the fasting person in the daylight hours, Allah gives them one moment wherein a supplication is not rejected. One moment in that day, Allah gives to every fasting person that any dua that they make, Allah will accept it. And one moment during the night, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants a person where that person's dua will be accepted. And this is for every day and every night of the month of Ramadan. And then it is the nights of i'tikaf. It's Laylatul Qadr. And opportunity after opportunity Allah gives us. But in the same token, my respected brothers and sisters, as much as there is the great possibility of great reward in Ramadan and maximum benefit, there is also the risk of a great loss and a terrible loss that a person will suffer in the month of Ramadan. Wailun liman adraka Ramadan falam yughfar lah. Nabi alayhi salatu wassalam, ascending the pulpit on occasion, said that woe be to that person who graces the month of Ramadan, yet despite Allah's mercy being at its pinnacle, that person was unable to attain the mercy and the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Ramadan, as much as there's opportunity for benefit, but there's the risk that if we don't adequately prepare ourselves to draw from this benefit, then the risk is there that we will lose out. And this session is from one of the aspects that where does the risk lie, the obstacles lie, that potential obstacles that we are at risk that we will not gain the maximum benefit that we should gain from the month of Ramadan. So for Ramadan, preparation is required. We need to prepare ourselves like how we enter into a person enters into any matter of importance. Pre-planning is a prerequisite. Pre-planning is a prerequisite. We cannot, Ramadan is not about entering and then a person decides, okay, this is now how I'm going to go about it. But we need to pre-plan. There's got to be a pre-action plan as to when I enter the month of Ramadan, how is it that I'm going to gain maximum benefit? And therefore, if we want barakah in our days and nights of Ramadan, the greatest barakah comes through istiqamah and through istimrar. Ulama have written that one of the benefits, one of the definitions of barakah and blessing in time is that Allah gives not only steadfastness, but Allah gives continuity in that. That means a person routinely carries out continuously what they set out to do. That is a sign that Allah has given barakah and blessing to a person. If I routinely know that after Fajr or after Isha Salah or after Salatul Maghrib, I am going to read so much tilawah of Quran. I'm taking out so much time to make dua. This is the hour or 2 or 5 or 10 that I will allocate to make dua. This is the moments that I will allocate for optional and nawafil prayer. These are and a person then does this continuously day in, day out through Ramadan. Know that Allah is giving you barakah in your time, because barakah also means that a person has the ability, Allah gives the ability of istimrar, continuity, the same cycle, routine, day in, day out. And that's why we know that a person who he undertakes a very far journey, a long journey, ash'atha, aghbara, that this person is in a disheveled state, is in a dusty state, and then yamuddu yadayhi ila sama, and then he extends his hands to the heavens. Like here's a person who is in a pitiful state, he's in a pitiful condition, he's in a condition that requires mercy, that he's undertaken a long journey, he doesn't have resources by him, and this person then is now in a state wherein he requires assistance and help from Allah, and he extends his hands to the heavens and he says, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, that he is making dua and he's crying out to Allah and he's shedding tears in front of Allah, but at the same time, وَمَطْعَمُهُ حَرَامٌ وَمَشْرَبُهُ حَرَامٌ وَمَلْبَسُهُ حَرَامٌ وَغُذِيَ بِالْحَرَامِ فَأَنَّى يُسْتَجَابُ لَهُ. Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam gives us such a dire warning that this person who is making dua to Allah, وَمَطْعَمُهُ حَرَامٌ, what he consumes is haram, وَمَشْرَبُهُ حَرَامٌ, what he is drinking is forbidden, وَمَلْبَسُهُ حَرَامٌ, the clothing on his body is earned through a haram source, وَغُذِيَ بِالْحَرَامِ, the food and the nourishment which he has taken, that is haram. فَأَنَّى يُسْتَجَابُ لَهُ. How is it possible that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers the dua of such a person? And this serves as the foundation and the principal point that we entering into the month of Ramadan, this is the first financial preparation that you and I need to review in our lives. That our income streams, potentially, if these streams and our income is haram, these are a direct obstacle potentially that our du'as do not get accepted in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How unfortunate that a person strives in the month of Ramadan. They wake up at the time of suhoor with great hardship, great difficulty, a day of earning hard for the family. Yet they wake up with great difficulty at tahajjud, day in, day out, very minimum hours of sleep. And we know that the month of Ramadan often is a very difficult time. It's very strenuous at the same time as it is peaceful. It's the same cycle, a rush from one thing to the next. Women of the home know this. Men who go out and work know this. Those in employment know this. Those who are laboring know this, that Ramadan can become a very tense time. And a person wakes up night after night in hardship, or at other times of the day, and is crying out in dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But yet, because the income is haram, apologies for this, a person's income is haram, and a person does not give any cognizance to where and how they are earning. This is something that one needs to take cognizance of. So that a person now needs to look at, the first thing that we need to look at is that my income stream, have I even given cognizance of this, that my business and my earning, is this halal? Is it permissible? The type of business that I run, the career that I have, and these are three areas that I put up on screen, just primarily potentially, which may be the major streams of our income. Have I ever thought about the business, the primary product of my business, or the products that I'm selling inside of my business? Are these permissible or not to sell? We live in such sensitive times that we know many a time we ourselves are not the manufacturers of the product. I may be selling a food item. Have I taken cognizance of the fact that is this 100% permissible? Or there's other items which are manufactured. There are items which at times may even venture on a very gray area. That is this permissible or not? When we start talking about professional careers, and this is a very sensitive area, that the career that I have undertaken, is this something that is permissible? Not every professional career lends itself to being Sharia compliant. There could be certain aspects of a particular career that needs to be reviewed. Inside of my professional career, perhaps I'm employed by a large firm which employs me or puts me on such a project which may be completely impermissible. I may be working as a lawyer, and at times, yes, there will be contracts which will be Sharia compliant, but there will be other areas which will be certainly non-Sharia compliant. As an accountant, what is my involvement and to what degree am I involved in promoting usurious and riba-based transactions? And these are moments. Ramadan offers us this opportunity. And this is the purpose of the session this evening, that I review the Sharia permissibility of the career that I have undertaken. Many a time ourselves, we may embark on careers, we may have embarked on a career, we may be placing our offspring, our kids, to embark on such careers, which themselves have not been checked or verified that this is Sharia compliant. And when we start thinking about this, the world that we live in, very often professional careers can lead down very many different paths. People go into finance. Those which look at, or we often look at to be the glittering careers of the professional and corporate world, many a time themselves will have areas which are non-Sharia compliant. And these in themselves, obviously, income which is earned and derived through areas which are impermissible, in themselves, that income will be haram. That is the same income that we consume with. Nabi alayhi salatu wassalam in the hadith mentioned that that part of the body that was nourished with haram is nothing but the fuel of Jahannam, let alone just this being a hindrance from du'as being accepted in the month of Ramadan. The consequences and implications of this are far more, that on the day of Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will most definitely bring into question our careers, our income, and that which was earned through haram. The body was nourished through that. The flesh of my child was nourished through that haram, most certainly will have implications and consequences in the hereafter. This leads us to the next matter, which is also the matter of investments. We are living in a day and age where generally those who are employed Obviously, there is the matter of superannuation, super funds, or those who are self-managing their super funds. We often don't take cognizance of this. At times, it's just super. And many a time, how many people we have spoken to, often queries land in front of us that I didn't even think about it, that where is my super going? I didn't even think about that whether my super is haram or is it halal? What is the status of my super? These are opportunities. Ramadan, how to financially prepare for Ramadan is just to build the awareness at this moment. I need to take cognizance that my investment funds, where are my investments? Is it just a case in the technology age that we are living? It's a case of I have an app, for example, I'm using a particular app, and it's this app that I just use to invest money. I'm selling shares. The younger generation are just, easy money through equities, through stocks, and of course the crypto and digital assets come into the discussion of this, NFTs. We're living in a day and age of where we are talking about a metaverse. And these are things that we need to reflect over. That is it just about the quick money that I'm going to make, or have I taken cognizance of this and looked at where is my money and my income stream coming from? There is no, legitimizing this in any way. Often, and at times we also hear that, Sheikh, I'll just make my first million or 100,000, and then after I make that first, large figure of money, I will then use that funds and I'll make up another 100,000 and give away the 100,000 in sadaqah and in charity, and in that way cleanse the wrong and the haram way that I earned my income. Clearly, this is delusional. This is haram. This is impermissible. Financial preparation for Ramadan means that I need to reflect and review these things which are there. Then related to this are the haram mortgages, conventional riba-based loans. Another riba-based debt. Have I reflected that the home I may be living in, Allah forbid, that I have taken out a riba and a conventional based mortgage, which day in, day out, continuously, all the time, 24/7, the cycle is the same, that I am living in a place wherein I have obtained through a haram source. And the opportunity to move this to a permissible and legitimate source at previously perhaps was not there. Now that opportunity is there in front of us in Australia, and we no longer have the excuse. Every time I mention this, I know it comes back to me that, there's this fatwa and that fatwa that came that said that you can buy your first house, or, that you can use riba because this is a non-Muslim country. As they say, Sahibul Bayti adraka bima fi. The people of the home are not more knowledgeable of the circumstances of what is there. Those of us who live on these shores are far more acquainted with the options that are available to the Muslim community which are there. And these are options we have reached a point which we mandatorily need to exercise. This is not an endorsement of all the providers which are there, but this is to say that there are options that we can exercise. And the option and the excuse that we had in the past that there were no options, those options, that excuse is no longer there. This, my respected brothers and sisters, is a moment to reflect that if I am involved in some form of haram, that home which was earned to haram, and in that same home I'm worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and expect that Allah accepts dua, this is all conflicted with each other. In Allah at-tayyib, Allah is pure. Allah expects purity from us. The expectation that Allah wants from you and I is that we worship Him in the most pure form. Then to move on from this, so these are, before we move on to the next slide, and I apologize, the intention was not to turn this into a lecture of sort, a bayan of sort, but really just to discuss this more from a practical point of view. So these are, before moving on to this, the first segment there is related to areas of obligatory financial planning. Really, if we have to summarize this in one sentence, we will say that we need to do a haram or a financial review of haram income, haram sources in my portfolio, in my career, in my business. That is the summary of the last moments of the discussion that we had. That this is a summary of it, that I need to do a financial review of, are there any forms of haram income which are coming? I need to take this opportunity leading up to Ramadan to change this with immediate effect. How do I change this? What do I need to do? What are the options out there? This is discussions that I need to have and opportunities that I need to explore. And that's the summary of the first few slides that we have. Then we have what we're calling, and this is an area which we have been reflecting over for a while, and what we're calling voluntary financial preparation. What do we mean by voluntary financial preparation? It means exactly that. So one is, say in the case of haram income, of course, Sharia does not give us the option of deciding that whether I will rid myself of haram income or not. Sharia has not given me this option. It's something that I mandatorily need to do. But then there are areas like zakah. So one is, on one hand, of course, zakah is obligatory. We're not going to get into the discussion as to whether zakah is obligatory or not. The zakah matter in itself, its details on how it needs to be paid, is of course a lengthy discussion. But what we're talking about here, we're talking about the fact that you and I both realize that we need to pay zakah. We realize that Quran has made mention of the word zakah with all of its derivatives more than 32 times in various parts of the Quran, various places of Quran. And we realize that I need to pay zakah. And I'm there, I've got to pay zakah. I know I need to do this. But what we often don't do is that we don't zakah plan. And what do we mean by zakah plan? We mean two things by this. One is zakah, at times it just kind of, it leaps out at us. It creeps up at us. It's like Ramadan has come again. And generally, although it is not necessary to pay zakah in Ramadan, we know that zakah works with its cycles, its annual lunar cycles, but generally a large portion of the ummah do pay their zakah during the month of Ramadan, because obviously sadaqah, charity, good actions, a'mal are multiplied manyfold, as per some hadith, 70 times. So a person giving their zakah, their charity in Ramadan, obviously multiplies the reward that they are giving, of the zakah that they are giving. So that aside, often zakah just comes up upon us and we start calculating our zakah, and then we start looking at figures. And how many a female I've not heard or I've not had asked the question, that I have so much jewelry, or a businessman, so much stock, and suddenly now there is a zakah figure that needs to be paid. 5, 10, 20, 100, 200, $500,000, who knows what. And suddenly that figure is now in front of me, and I don't have the cash flow to pay this zakah. I don't have it. Why? Because I've not pre-planned for this. We have people who are specialists in tax planning, that we pre-plan tax, that deduct your tax on a fortnightly, monthly, annual basis, so that when your tax return comes, you're not scrambling to find the money to pay the tax return. When it comes to zakah, this for some reason doesn't happen. It's like we almost feel that zakah is like something that I'm doing from my side. And so therefore, when the time comes, I'll deal with it. Allah will give me the money, the finances, and I'll pay. And we find it very, very hard and difficult to part with that money. We find it very difficult to part with that money. Allah forbid and forgive us. We don't even view zakah as an ibadah, as a fundamental pillar. We view it like a tax. Zakah is not a tax. It's not a thither payment that we are doing to the upkeep of the masjid, the Islamic State, or the clergy of the religion. This is not, zakah is not that. It's part of the social financial system of Islam. And so therefore, we need to financially prepare for this. That how beforehand, how do I have the funds by me? What is my zakah figure payment going to look like for this year? Am I liable to pay? How much is that going to be? Let me pre-plan and have these funds kept aside so that the moment that zakah payment comes, I am able to disburse of that zakah immediately with immediate effect. How often have we ever thought about this? When Quran told us, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا. Where Quran told the Nabi of Allah that take from their charity, what will be the benefit of zakah? And you ulama mufassirun are unanimous here that in this ayah, sadaqah means zakah. What is implied by zakah? What will the benefit of it be? تُطَهِّرُهُمْ بِهَا وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ. There are two benefits. Commentators mention both of it. One benefit is that it will internally purify you, human being, with the inherent greed that you have for wealth. That you disburse your zakah, give your zakah, and it will train you and it will cleanse your attachment to the matters of material of this world. Give that 2.5%, it will train you to hate and to no longer be so attached to the world. In the same token, one commentary of this is, it will purify the wealth. Look at Allah's mercy, that 2.5% to purify 97.5% is pure on account of just giving 2.5%. I mean, where can you get a return like that? That only pays so much, the rest of it is pure, it is filled with nur, with barakah, with mercy, halal, pure money that you have fulfilled the haqq and the right of, that you can use as you choose in the obedience of Allah. And yet, we don't prepare for this. It's like zakah comes and I don't pay this year, and then it accumulates because I don't have the cash flow. So I'll decide I'll pay next month, then maybe next month, 1 year becomes 2, 2 years become 5, and suddenly the amount that I need to pay is so overwhelming. So we call this zakah planning. It's something that we need to financially, and as I said, this is the voluntary side of financial preparation, that let me zakah plan, that how am I going to disburse of my zakah? Where will I get the cash flow for this? And I'm directly addressing a lot of the female of our community and those who are listening, because often it's, the wife tells the husband, listen, you pay the zakah, you gave me the jewelry, you got to pay for it. If you didn't give it to me, I would not have had the jewelry, and therefore I did not have to pay the zakah. It's like a double-edged sword. You give the jewelry, but then you also need to worry about paying the zakah. If the Sharia is clear on this, if a female owns the jewelry, she is liable to pay the zakah. If the husband pays it voluntarily from his side, and mashallah, he should do that, he will get a lot of reward for this. We're highly encouraging that you should, all of us, Nabi alayhi salam, in the month of Ramadan, karihil mursala, he used to give sadaqah like the blowing wind. So therefore, if we give charity and give it on behalf of our wives, then mashallah, we will get lots of reward for this. But ultimately, it's not an obligation on the husband that he does this. So often we get the question from sisters that I don't have the cash or the money to pay for the zakah, what must I do? And so therefore, if one is liable to pay for zakah, it means Sharia is saying that you have the money. If you don't have the cash flow, then you need to sell some item, or you need to give something away from that which is equivalent to the zakah that is liable upon you and obligatory upon you. So financial preparation for zakah, and we call this financially preparing or zakah planning. Related to this is also accurate calculations. This is part of financial preparation for Ramadan, that it's not a case that I just fling about figures, that I don't take cognizance of how should I calculate my zakah. What are zakatable assets? What are non-zakatable assets? Have I taken cognizance of this? It's not a case, it's not a mind game. Zakah is an obligation. Like a person performs Salatul Isha, it's not a mind game. I don't worship Allah as I choose, that I'll decide, yes, I needed to make Salah, but I'll determine that how I will perform the Salah. Maybe I'll do 1 rakah, maybe I'll do 5, and this is the mannerism in which I will do. There's no games in this. It's something that is designated by the Sharia. The rulings are clear cut with regard to this. So these days, alhamdulillah, we have many resources which are out there, zakah calculators. If you go online, you'll find many of these. And one needs to take cognizance of it, obviously, to make sure that these are comprehensive enough. Ourselves at CIEA, normally we have a zakah spreadsheet and calculator which is available. Now it's not been updated to the site. We've just been updating a few things on there. But inshallah, in the next few days or 2 or 3 days, this will be up. And inshallah, we can use that. And there are other comprehensive calculators, zakah calculators, which are also available. And I'm just hinting towards the fact that, again, these days, zakah calculations are not necessarily as straightforward when it comes to equities, shares. The question of zakah on cryptos, NFTs, is there zakah, is there no zakah? Many a time businesses, we are not very cognizant of how we calculate zakah on stock. We may not have accurate stock figures, these type of things. There's many areas that we need to look at. So this is something which is part of zakah planning for the month of Ramadan. So related to this, of course, on the slide that we have in front of us is zakatul fitr and sadaqatul fitr. This is our calculations for Australia. And just in case there's questions here with regard to the zakah nisab, the zakah nisab, it can be calculated both on gold and silver. And there's a disparity between this because during the time of Rasulullah, the asset class of both metals were the same. However, over the passage of time, we know there is this difference between the value of both of these. And that's why there is a difference between these prices. When we look at these prices, or we look at these as a nisab, we can consider nisab essentially to be what we call, what we will call the poverty line, what Sharia, or how it defines the poverty line, the indexation or line in Sharia. And so those who fall beneath this are considered to be those who are worthy recipients of zakah. In the same token, zakah will not be payable by them. And those who fall above this, they will be liable to be paying zakah. The question that comes at which one of these do we normally use? If we have mixed asset classes, which include silver and other asset classes, then normally we advise that the silver nisab should be used. And if we only have gold as an asset class, then we use gold as the nisab. Of course, the nisab here, and I appreciate that, there's many figures that come out, both in terms of sadaqatul fitr and the nisab of zakah. When it comes to the nisab of zakah, we have taken into cognizance 24 karat gold, because this represents 99.9%, 99% gold. And this is the price as is the date indicated. Yes, and we know that as the gold carat goes down, 21, 18 carat, 22, 21, then it moves away from being pure gold to having a mixture of alloy, 91% or 87.5% in the case of 21 carat, and then 18 carat. And as it goes down, obviously the gold value and the mixture of gold with alloy becomes less. So therefore, this price that is reflected here is of 24 karat gold. And this was the price as the date which was indicated. As far as sadaqatul fitr goes, Nabi alayhi salatu wassalam, and this is based on the Hanafi madhab, that sadaqatul fitr can be given based on any of these values. Normally we use the lowest value as a benchmark, which is $15.80, which is reflected here. Wheat, which is $10.45. The lowest is the benchmark. One cannot go lower than that, but it's recommended that one go higher than that. And also, just as a recommendation as well from our side, that one is that we start giving sadaqatul fitr. We don't have to wait for the day before Eid or the day of Eid. We can give it now. We can give it in the early days of Ramadan. And the purpose is that the earlier we give it, the greater ability it is for it to reach the recipient that it's intended to reach. And one takes cognizance of this over the past years, that these prices which are reflected here, when we looked at it, there's almost a 30, even 40% increase on the previous year. And this shows that how the prices of food and commodities have risen, and how much more expensive things have become. And one takes cognizance of this, that the more we give, the greater, inshallah, the benefit this will be. So this is part of the areas of Ramadan planning or financial preparation for Ramadan, that how we can enhance our Ramadan. Then related to this, also the payment of debts, creditors, zakah, kafara, and fidya. So what does this mean? See, at times, zakah, again, this is, we try and settle creditors, those that we owe money to, especially if we have the means to pay. Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam in the hadith warned us about this, that matalul ghani dhulmun, that a person who withholds, one who has the means to pay a creditor or somebody they're owing money to, and they withhold the money just for no reason, and they withhold it, Nabi alayhi salam said that this is a dhulm, this is an oppression, that a person is oppressing that person, and he's oppressing himself, that this darkness he will see on the day of Qiyamah. So as much as we can, if we have the financial means to settle whatever debts we have, we should do this before the onset of the month of Ramadan. And zakah, meaning that the previous years, if there is zakah which is outstanding, we should try and settle that. There is some detail with regard to the madhahib. Kafara means expiations. For example, there may have been a person who has taken an oath of some sort and had broken that. They need to pay a kafara and expiate for that. Fidya means those who are expiating for past fasts which were not kept. Again, there's some detail with regard to this. But if you know that you're owing money with regard to this, then try and settle this before the month of Ramadan descends upon us. And finally, this is one point which I will be ending on, and this is what we're calling a sadaqah portfolio or zakah portfolio. Again, this is just food for thought. It's not necessarily directly related with our discussion, but it is a question that comes up from time to time. One of those questions are that, who do I give my zakah to? There's so many needy needs around the world globally. There's so many places, people, organizations doing much good work. And I find great difficulty as to, where should I give my zakah? At times, and I include in the sadaqah and zakah, at times some of us, we make decisions based on various factors. Sometimes it's just historical affiliation that we have with an individual, an institution, or an organization, and that becomes the point of where my zakah and charity goes to. Other times, maybe I don't even think about it, but it's purely based on convenience, that because this is the easiest, most convenient option, and therefore I give my sadaqah and zakah there. Other times there may be causes which are closer to my heart, and so therefore my sadaqah and zakat, these can become the recipients of my sadaqah and zakat. Now, ulama globally have been discussing what we are calling impactful zakat. The global Muslim Ummah is giving, and during this month of Ramadan, we've looked over the past years, and even these are very rough figures, try to break it down by city, by country. There's billions of dollars which are being given in zakah. What we want to talk about is impactful zakah, that I want to give my zakah in such a way that it has an impact. And how does my zakah have an impact? There are many ways that I can look at this, but one of the ways is by doing an organizational check. Organizational check means that I need to make sure that what I am giving is reaching the intended recipient which I am giving for. And this is something which I need to have cognizance of, and I should be aware of this. The matter of transparency is an important one within this discussion. And related to this is, of course, the fact that, the sadaqah and zakah that I'm giving, there is the discussion. And again, I take the point that there are many viewpoints of this, that how much of my zakah that I'm giving, how much percent of this is actually reaching the intended recipient by the donor? Is it 100%? Is it 95%? Is it less than that? So these things could be deciding factors. I'm not giving a fatwa on this. I'm fully aware this is a discussion that is an ongoing discussion related to the matter of how much of these funds actually reach intended recipients or not. But that discussion aside, what we mean by developing a sadaqah portfolio, that Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam in the hadith, and when we look at Quran, it talks about 8 different categories of recipients of zakah, for example. many organizations focus perhaps on one, some on two, some on all. I want to see that how can I develop a portfolio, just like I have a investment portfolio where all my eggs are not in one basket, for the sole reason that the benefit from one may come, but if I extend it to multiple investments, then I will have multiple benefits coming from multiple different sources. In the same way, we take the same concept and we apply it to a sadaqah portfolio. Let me look around me. And by this, I don't only mean organizations. What we mean by this is, yes, those organizations, but then they may be family members, they may be individuals, there may be other areas where in some organizations maybe not touching upon, but I feel that I want to disburse my zakah or sadaqah inside of these areas. This is what we mean by creating a sadaqah and a zakah portfolio. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because at times we often become overwhelmed. The month of Ramadan, we will have many requests coming to our inbox, to the masajid. There'll be many organizations, masajid, institutions, centers, places collecting, and it becomes overwhelming. That, okay, how do I give? And sometimes, it's like what we call guilt giving, that I feel guilty that a person is there and they're really stirring my emotion and I just give something. Sometimes I really don't have the means to give. So I walk past and I feel really bad and I don't give and I don't donate. By creating a portfolio, in this way, I'm able to say, okay, I'm allocating 5, 10, 20% of my funds that, this is the place I want to give it. That's the organization I want to give. That's the cause I want to give to. And like this, a diversification in this, inshallah, will help us to give more impactful zakah. It may take a bit of time to develop this, but at least it's some food for thought that over time, I can then start moving my portfolio around, checking, deciding. And ultimately, you and I as donors, you and I as people who are giving, we also have a right to see that the zakah and the sadaqah is impactful. Impactful doesn't necessarily only mean that 100% is being given. Impactful means and can mean many different things in many different forms and shapes, but this is a discussion for another time. So inshallah, this is the slides that we had and the discussion that we had at hand for this evening. Inshallah, just before we head to Q&A, I'm just not so sure if there are any questions and how I can actually see this. But inshallah, before we move to that, if there are any queries, inshallah, my details are up on the screen. Some may have my direct details. You're more than welcome to contact us, inshallah ta'ala. and inshallah, where we can assist and get the necessary assistance to have our questions answered, inshallah, you're more than welcome to pose that to us, inshallah, where we can assist. And before we move to the questions as well, we inshallah invite you to Safwah Online. Some of us may be logging on to for the first time. Safwah Online is essentially a content platform where from time to time we have live streams, and there's much content on the website, as some of us would have seen, contributions by various ulama. And during the month of Ramadan, inshallah, for this month of Ramadan, we have a very interesting lineup wherein almost 24/7 Safwah Online will be having programs and qira'at and adhkar and dua playing 24/7 online. So inshallah, this is an opportunity to avail from these programs. There'll be various ulama contributing programs of tafsir, other motivations, masail, and like this, inshallah, there'll be much contributions. So inshallah, we hope that this will be of benefit for us during the month of Ramadan. I'm not sure if it's up yet, but if not, if it is, well and good. If not, inshallah, in a day or two, the Ramadan schedules will be going up, so one can take note of that, inshallah. And also the CIEA platform is also just a platform wherein it serves the community in the matters of mu'amalat, in the matters of Islamic financial matters. Financial matters is not only Islamic banking, but our lives by and large revolve around money. And alhamdulillah, with the grace of Allah, this platform has been formulated in order to access this, inshallah ta'ala. So with this, inshallah, we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fill our Ramadan with goodness, with khair, with afiyah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this session one which was filled with barakah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove this waba and this difficulty that has befallen the ummah. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. I understand that no questions has been asked. So inshallah ta'ala, we will leave this session there. May Allah accept it from us. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.